In this video for section 2.2, we're talking about how to identify where a graph is increasing, decreasing, and constant. Now, the definitions that the book gives are a little bit complicated. Basically, what we want to do is just look at the graph and determine, is the graph rising from left to right, is it falling from left to right, or is it horizontal? And we always look from left to right. The same direction that we read is left to right. So from left to right, is the graph going up? Is the graph going down? Or is it horizontal? So a couple of other things. First of all, we always use open intervals when we're talking about increasing, decreasing, and constant. And we're always describing the x-coordinates or the range of x-coordinates. So we will have two numbers. Between this number and that number, the graph is increasing or decreasing or constant. So always use parentheses and always look at the x-axis. So example 1 says to state the intervals on which each given function is increasing, decreasing, or constant. And the homework in MyLab Math is going to break this up into 3 parts. You're going to have to identify increasing, identify decreasing, and identify constant if there are any intervals where that happens. So when I look at this, I see it's decreasing as we go down to 0, and then at 0 it turns around. And now the graph is increasing here up to 2, and then it starts decreasing again. So it's increasing between 0, x equals 0, and x equals 2. And we always use open intervals, so that would be 0, 2 with parentheses around it. Where's the graph decreasing? Well, it's decreasing. Everything up until 0 is decreasing. This arrow tells me that it's just going to go further and further up as I go further to the left. So decreasing from negative infinity up to 0. Remember, when we do intervals, it's always smaller number first, and so negative infinity would always come first if negative infinity is in the interval. And the other part where it's decreasing is everything after 2. So this would be 2, comma, infinity. Constant, there's no horizontal part of the graph here. And you'll see an option when you do the homework that there is no interval, and so that would be your selection for this one. So for B, we have this horizontal part of the graph with the endpoint here at 0, 2, and then this other part of the graph where it jumps into more of a parabola shape. So it's increasing on the part of the graph that has the parabola shape, and it actually doesn't matter here which point the endpoint goes with. When we're talking about intervals, we always use parentheses. So it would be increasing. X here is 0, so it's increasing from 0 up to infinity. There's no part of the graph that is decreasing, and it's constant on this part of the graph. And this part of the graph goes from negative infinity up to 0. Again, use parentheses always when talking about increasing, decreasing, and constant. So even though this point here is included in the graph, I would still use a parenthesis around that end. So next you should look at checkpoint problem number 1. Do this in your notes, check your answer, and then you can do the homework.